I have ADHD, and no, it's not self diagnosed. For as long as I can remember, my brain doesn't really do calm. To be productive, whether it's in relationship, work, or pretty much anything, I tend to work best under pressure, a lot of it, like juggling a billion things at once. It's not exactly relaxing, but it's just how I've learned to survive and honestly, sometimes thrive. Still, there is a lot I don't understand about it. I do often wonder though, where I end and my ADHD begins. Is it me who forgets to reply to text messages, interrupts people mid conversation, and is always really late to everything? Or is it my brain doing its ADHD thing? And lately, I've started wondering if that confusion stretches into the bedroom too. What if the way my brain works, the same ADHD that fuels my drive and also restlessness, is also shaping my desire, my connection, my ability to be present and intimate with someone I love? Well, today I'm speaking to Dr. Ari Tuckman, a psychologist and certified sex therapist who spent years exploring exactly that. How ADHD changes the way we experience intimacy. Through his book ADHD After Dark, Ari gathered stories from hundreds of couples to uncover the hidden patterns of attention impulsivity and emotions that can make or break our sex lives.
I'm Sahar, a journalist on a quest to understand the world through the lens of how people do sex.
So, as a sex therapist, what made you want to focus on ADHD and sex?
So actually, it's as a therapist, I decided to focus on couples and sex is really more the order of events,
The
right?
other way
So,
around.
so yeah, I mean, my specialty for 25 years has been ADHD, and particularly ADHD in adults, which was definitely when I started out kind of a neglected population. It's gotten better, but we're not awesome at it yet. And then I became interested not only in helping people on sort of the things that individuals deal with, but also like how does it show up in your relationship? And how does it then also show up in your sex life, which is kind of a big part of relationships and part of a big part of adult life. So yeah, it has really sort of all come together because all of it, like each part influences the rest.
This might sound like a bit of a stupid question, please don't judge me. But how much does it impact relationship and sex? And I've read
Mhm.
some of the incredible work you've done, some of the studies you've carried out, the extraordinary statistics and results you had. But does it really impact it that much?
It absolutely can. Like it absolutely can. And again, everything we say is with this sort of, caveat that if it's not being well managed, if you don't understand it, if you're not doing the things to sort of, you know, deal with it in a productive way. But like that's all of us, right? That's life. We all have to figure our stuff out and figure out how to show up in the right way to do what we need to do. But it in terms of how does ADHD affect somebody's sex life, there's sort of direct effects in the sense of like, how does it impact maybe sexual interest or sexual activities? So, for example, maybe being more impulsive in hooking up with someone you just met, right? That would be like a direct ADHD effect. But for most of us, the sex we're having is with people that we're in some kind of a relationship with. And especially if we talk about long term relationships, my kind of smart ass joke on this is the non ADHD partner, they're still interested in sex. They're just not interested in sex with you. Right. Because, it's become frustrating. You may not be interested in sex with them either because sniping at each other, like, not sexy, like, no, thank you. Keep your clothes on.
What do you mean sniping?
Well, sort of, so let's say your partner's frustrated that you left a bunch of crap out, when you ran out the door to go to work and you were supposed to do this thing and you didn't do it. And you're supposed to do that other thing, you didn't really do it. And, now they're kind of getting on your case and they feel like your mom, which is definitely not sexy. And, the whole thing, it's just, it's too much tug of war between the two of you And that then casts this kind of long shadow on too much of what's going on in your relationship.
Interesting. So you think the main issue when it comes to ADHD and sex is because of that dynamic, that tension that's created between couples, because of certain shortcomings or chaos that comes with someone who suffers from ADHD or who has ADHD. I suffer from it, so I'm going to say suffer.
Well, I think, and I'm going to steal somebody else's line, but I used to suffer from ADHD. Now I just have it, right? And I think that's sort of like the big point here is you can still have it and not suffer with it, right? If you understand it, if you manage it well. Also, if your partner understands it and manages it well, right? Then because it's nothing in a relationship goes one direction. Everything is a circle, right? So I don't know, you leave some stuff out that you should have put away, and then your partner sees it. And on the one hand, okay, yeah, we can understand that they would be frustrated. On the other hand, if they're sort of a jerk about it, right, then that circles back around and that's going to affect how you relate back to them, right? And like around and around we go versus, do they deal with it in a more productive, more sensitive kind of a way, in a way that also gets them more of what they want.
Mm. It- It's interesting you mentioned that because initially in our early years, we've been together for close to 7 years now. And he's very British and he lived in Japan, so he's very orderly, he's very on time. And I'm quite tidy, but I like my time blindness was driving him crazy. He couldn't understand it. And it did cause some issues early on, but then he's also very forgiving and I try very hard and we communicate and over communicate, which really helped. And we've gotten to a point where we have an understanding. We don't, there is no tension between us that we know of. In fact, we don't really fight like that.
Mhm.
Which I guess brings us to all the other questions I want to ask you. Because then I want to find out how my ADHD is kind of impacting, or people like me who aren't necessarily, having these fights or like dynamics, but then are still kind of suffering.
Yeah. So let me actually comment on this. So,
Okay.
so you're terrible at time, not a thing you're good at,
Awful.
right? It's kind of like being colorblind, right? It's just sort of like, don't see it, don't feel it, really bad at navigating around it. So, on the one hand, I'm glad that he has come to a point that he doesn't take it personally. She's always late because she doesn't care about me. False, not it, right? You're late to stuff you care about, right? You're not just selfish, right? You are bad at managing time. That's different. Also, some of this then is for him to not have the expectation that you're going to be ready on time, just left to your own devices. Also, maybe there are nicer and more effective ways for him to say, hey, honey, we need to leave in 10 minutes, as opposed to like looking at you undressed still and go like, oh, God damn it. Right. Like that's not going to help. So I'm sure he's found nicer ways, and I'm sure you have found ways to take it nicer also, right? Maybe, right? Or at
We
least
still
where if
fight
he
every time we have
says,
to go somewhere.
yeah, I mean, none of us are perfect, but at least maybe for your part, recognizing, okay, so he's feeling stressed out. I am not, but I know he is. And even though, okay, there's a little bit of an edge to what he just said there, I am not going to take it personally. I'm not going to sort of fire back some snarky comment or whatever, because I don't want to have a fight here, right? Like there are ways to sort of manage this so there aren't those bad feelings that then affect not just how you feel about each other in general, but also specifically in terms of sex. And if we're going to sort of transition into that, I mean, there's also the other part. Like to have sex, you need to show up in the same place at the same time, right? And that can be an issue for couples as well.
Yeah, I have like no routine. My life has no routine.
Mhm.
Do you think that could be a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And in some ways, it's a blessing and a curse. The fact that your life is sort of less structured, right? It doesn't sound like you're working some like hardcore 9 to 5. So, like, that is a better fit for you. And also, it means you have less of that built in structure to hang the rest of your life around, if that makes sense. So it becomes a thing then that for you guys, in terms of spending time together, whether you're hanging out or fooling around or whatever, it just it is a thing that you have to kind of plan around. But other couples, they have jobs or lives or kids or whatever other obligations where their schedule doesn't look that different than yours does, right? In the sense that it's not completely predictable and they need to sort of intentionally work around it.
Yeah. You mentioned structuring, and that's definitely something that I thought about, I read about, and we discussed it. We were like, oh, maybe given my way, maybe we should schedule it. And we definitely thought about it and spoke about it.
Hmm.
But when it came to practice, we just never did. And the thought
Yeah.
of scheduling it in, like nothing could be less exciting and sexy. And for me, I like spontaneity. I can't even pronounce it. I like to be spontaneous, especially with things that are supposed to be about connection and fun, and schedule it in. Oh, kill me now.
So I have two thoughts for you, which are contradictory, but it will depend on the person and the moment. So on the one hand, yeah, there's a lot of people who feel like that, right? That sounds terrible. No, thank you. Um,
Yes.
and also, I mean, there is something to be said for some scheduling. It's not a contractual obligation, right? Maybe you're not into it in that moment. Maybe the time comes and, well, nobody comes, right? So, um, but also, there is something to be said for, I am looking forward to this. This is a thing that, we're planning on doing. I think it could be good. Let me sort of think about it in a positive way. Let me, start getting myself fired up. Maybe let me send a fun text. It's sort of like if you're seeing a concert or a comedian or something tonight, right? You would probably be looking forward to it, right? You'd be anticipating it. You're like, oh, this is going to be so good. I can't wait. Maybe you're like playing some of the band's songs, you're getting your choruses and, vocals down. Right. Like you do things to show up in a good kind of a way when the moment arrives, right? You don't show up the comedian, you're like, ugh, I had a bad mood. Don't talk, I had a shitty day. Don't talk to me. Right.
It's like you're in my head. It's like you're the third, you've always been this third person in my relationship. Okay, so what you're saying is, sorry, I need to stop laughing. I'm laughing because it just makes so much sense. So what you're saying is change your mind frame. Don't think of it as this like boring scheduled thing in that you have to do. Think of it as change the way you're thinking about it and like have it be something that you're excited about and look forward to.
And again, and maybe it doesn't work out, right? So I don't know. I heard the term, it's a window of willingness, right? Like I am willing to show up and to see what happens. And sometimes, right, this is that whole idea of responsive desire. You're not super excited before, but once you get there, you're actually great. You're like, oh, actually, now that we're sort of beginning to touch a little bit, we're making out, like some things are happening. Yeah, actually, you know what? I am kind of, down for this, right? And
Mm.
maybe it sort of shows up. And then maybe it doesn't, right? And that is okay too. And don't make yourself have sex if you don't want to, because that just sets up way more trouble later.
Can I overshare? The thing with me is when things get started, I never have an issue continuing, right? I'm into it. Like it's fine. It's the step in getting started. And I have that problem with most things in life. It's just getting into it. Once I'm into it, I'm into it. And I'm like, woo, I get hyper focused and it's great. But it's just that that feels
Yeah.
like, ugh.
Right. Yeah. So, and that is definitely like all of this is true, right? All this stuff you're saying. So that, whether it's sex or, I don't know, sorting receipts for taxes or other boring things that one needs to do as an adult, right? Sometimes it is the getting started is the hardest part. But I think that's also worth reminding ourselves of. Like, I totally don't feel like doing this right now, but I also know that what I feel in this moment may not last, right? 3 minutes into this, I might actually feel sort of different about it. So it is a thing to remind yourself of. And again, being willing to try it out and to see where it goes. The pleasure is the measure, right? This is about enjoying the moment that we have together. And there are a lot of sex therapy problems that come from too much pressure, right? Somehow or other, right? Too much sort of performance pressure of this has to go a certain way. I have to be a certain way. I have to look a certain way. All like, and now it's a freaking job interview. It's not like a fun thing you're doing together. So, taking down the pressure of performance and to focus more on what feels good, what am I enjoying, what do I want to do here, just it makes everything easier, it makes everything function better, and it makes for a more kind of connected experience.
Even though once I get started with things, I get going. But like, for example, at work, when I'm doing admin things, I can't just do one thing and then move to the other. I usually mix them up together, and that's when I don't get distracted. Like, I literally doing three things at once just makes me stay focused on all of them. Whereas when I just do one, I get distracted. I've had that during sex. Sometimes I'm in it, I'm enjoying it. Honestly, I get so distracted. My mind goes into so many things, and I really struggle to kind of stay in it. And I wonder, is it like, is it an ADHD thing? Because I know it happens to everyone. Like, you always hear it, you know.
It does indeed happen to everybody. Everybody has those moments during sex where they get distracted. Some people it happens more, and people with ADHD it probably happens more. But also, it's only a problem if you make it a problem. Right. And the way to make it a problem is to start reading meaning into it. Oh my God, what does this mean? Maybe our sex isn't good anymore. It's not holding my attention. Maybe there's something wrong with me that I can't enjoy it. Maybe there's something wrong with my partner that they're not something. Or from the partner's perspective, if they realize the other person is distracted, then of course all their insecurities could go through the roof. And none of it is helpful. It all feels terrible. It only makes it worse. It gets you back into performance mode and not enjoyment mode. And that, as easy as this is to say, the solution is simply, oh, okay, wait a sec. Okay, wait, back to it. Wait, what are we doing here again? Right? Like, that's it, done, mission accomplished, right? And same deal. If you're the other person, you think your partner is getting distracted, you just sort of say, like, hey, come on back to me, or you just sort of change positions or you do some other thing and you just go forward, right? Done.
Okay.
Not a problem if it's not a problem.
Okay, I think I definitely do that. I overthink it. Like, when I'm getting distracted, I judge myself for being distracted. Then I'm like, is this not good enough? Am I not good enough? Then
And
it
now
just
you're
like the thing
doomed.
that distracted me takes me into other things. And you're absolutely right. It becomes a performative thing because you're like, well, I'm in it. Let's complete it. I also don't want to hurt the person's feeling. Yeah, but sometimes, honestly, like, I just like catch myself, like, writing a documentary script, like in the middle of something, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what? How long have I been gone for? You know? Okay, so just gently push yourself back into it.
You just come on back. Like, here I am, come back into the moment, come back into your body. What's happening? How does this feel? How does that feel? What do I want to feel? Right? You just kind of come on back into the present moment and what's happening. And, that whole, like, you said that commentary, right? It's that spectatoring, as it's called in sex therapy, that you're not in the moment, you're watching yourself in the moment, and you've got this like running dialogue about what's happening, and it completely takes you out of the moment. And for guys who are trying to keep an erection, an awesome way to lose your erection is to start freaking out about your erection, right? That's a really good, because freaking out about erections not actually sexy, it turns out. Right, what's sexy is the person you're with and what's happening. That'll keep you hard. And if you want to kill your erection immediately, start worrying about what's happening.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad I don't have that problem because,
Yeah.
whew,
Yeah.
pew.
Yeah. Or the other person or the other partner starts freaking out. Oh my God, I did something wrong. I'm not hot enough. I'm not whatever. And now everybody feels terrible. And what should be a fun, connecting experience becomes an awful failure. and just a venue for every insecurity to come pouring out.
You mentioned these insecurities and like rejection, right? And I was just looking at my notes. One of the things that you actually included in your study was about oversensitivity when it comes to rejection and neurodivergency, ADHD. Can you tell me a bit about that?
So there's a term called rejection sensitive dysphoria. And dysphoria just means sort of a negative mood. It's like a fancy word. But folks with ADHD seem to have a stronger reaction to either real or perceived, rejection or criticism or, whatever. So it's hard to know exactly what's going on there. I think some of it probably is neurological in the sense that folks with ADHD feel their feelings a little bit more than folks who don't have ADHD. Part of what makes people with ADHD fun to hang out with. So there is that. But I think also, if you've lived a lot of your life with undiagnosed and therefore untreated ADHD, you have definitely had more experiences of people being unhappy with what you're doing, right? So you have experienced much more criticism, much more rejection, much more, judgment and, shame and all those other kind of very, very unpleasant feelings.
Especially in school.
Yep.
Yeah.
But not just in school, also as an adult and also outside of school. And, it just comes with you.
Is there a link between being ADHD and the type of people we like to choose? Because I personally, all the people I picked before my partner, the majority of them, were a very certain type of person.
Yeah.
I went for quite toxic people. I went for quite like people who would keep me on edge, who would usually a lot of abusive relationships in many ways, like kind of people who would hold affection, love, time, anything away from me so that the little they gave me, I kept getting this endorphin hit.
Yeah.
What is the link between ADHD and the type of people we choose?
So I think there's a lot of ways that this shows up. And I think that your experience, especially as a woman, is not entirely uncommon, right? And I think it comes back to what we're just talking about of like, what do you deserve in a relationship? How do you deserve to be treated? And if you're the one who's often messing up and people are pointing it out, here, yeah, as usual, you're late, or like you said you're going to do it, you didn't do it. I do stuff for you, you don't do stuff for me, right? You're always kind of behind. Then you might be more willing to tolerate that sort of an abusive relationship, or at least maybe it's not capital A abusive, but it's little a abusive at least, because it's sort of like, well, this is all I can ask for. And if I leave this shitty guy, I can't, there aren't other good ones lining up. And that is an awful place to be. So there's definitely that. Hopefully most young women with ADHD grow out of that phase. And hopefully those guys also grow up and become a lot better. But there is definitely, there's a bit of a joke in the field, but that like those with attention deficit tend to marry those with attention excess. So I laughed a little bit when you said your partner is very British and he's very particular and lived in Japan. Like, yeah, there it is, attention excess, right? Now, the thing is, you were not assigned to each other. He chose you and you chose him, right? He brings maybe a structure and grounding and you bring a sense of liveliness and fun or something, right? So like there are reasons why we wind up with each other and hopefully it's more good than bad.
I bring something. Yeah, we're a bit of a
You do.
yin
The
yang.
guy stuck around for 7 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
I
No, it's
assume your
great.
parents aren't paying him to hang out with you. So, right? Like, there's got to be something good you're bringing.
Someone's got to be paying him, honestly. I can be a bit of a nightmare. Do you think that there is something about the ADHD brain that sort of like gravitates towards, I don't know, like novelty or like a certain type of energy?
I think there can be. Like, there can definitely be that sort of calming, grounding feeling. But I think that, it can also go the other way. And this might also have been part of what made those kind of toxic relationships appealing is there's no dull moments, right? You do bad at boring. And probably those guys were mostly not boring. Not always a car crash is also not boring, but I wouldn't recommend it. So like, there's also a bit of that, that like seeking that like high pressure, the high stimulation, the something that kind of lights up your brain.
That is, I mean, you said you don't recommend car crashes, but definitely I think I was attracted to that because
Mm,
especially like when you're younger and you're more, I don't know, whatever you are, whatever I was, like I was definitely attracted to the car crashes just because they kept giving me all these things. It was
yeah.
constantly things to juggle, good and bad.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you, I don't know how to ask this without like sounding on PC. I think I wrote it. I'm going to read it
Okay.
from my question before because it's one of those questions that could be taken the wrong way. With people who are more sexually fluid or bisexual, I'm not saying you
Hmm.
choose your
Hmm.
sexuality, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you think that like there's a link between being, having ADHD and, for example, wanting to be more adventurous sexually or being more open?
Yeah.
Are you more like fluid in attraction? Like, does that align with that kind of brain wiring, the need for variety, stimulation, openness?
Sure. No, I think it is a good question. I think it's a real question. So I think that, first of all, in terms of sexual desire or maybe any desire, right? Like there's what do we feel on the inside, and then there's the what do we allow ourselves to do on the outside, right? So that, and you get culture and family, and all this stuff, right? That sort of comes into that. But, I do think, and in the survey I did, I've got the data to back this up, that in general, across group averages, I do think that folks with ADHD often have greater what I call sexual eagerness, meaning sort of a higher desired sexual frequency, perhaps more easily aroused, masturbate more often, a greater interest in consensual non-monogamy, also greater experiences with consensual non-monogamy, kind of, stuff like that. And it makes sense, right? Because presumably all that sexual stuff is interesting, right? It's fun, it's exciting, it's pleasurable. And we know people with ADHD are more attuned to, they're more influenced by the temptation of fun and exciting things over boring things like cleaning the sink and emptying the dishwasher. So it does make sense. Now, what do you do with that is a whole different question, right? So if you're having sex with different guys at the bar every night, like I'm not going to judge from any moral perspective, but it from a safety perspective, it might be problematic. um on the other hand, especially in a long-term relationship, right, somebody's got to keep it fresh and exciting, because otherwise it's just kind of all the same old sex. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it also becomes less fun over time. So I think it's all about how you sort of use it.
So, like, what can you do in a long-term relationship
I
with
think you got to,
in light of what you just said?
yeah, I think you need to find some ways to continue to make it sort of interesting in whatever way that means. And like, look, there are some people where having sex in the same way every Sunday night is perfect. And if that's the case, I encourage them to do it. But if that's not going to do it for you, then what can you do to sort of mix it up, to keep it interesting, and to keep it to be a bit intentional about making it a priority in your life, right? That this can't be the first thing that doesn't happen. And the advantage of being with someone you've been with for a while is you know each other well, right? You know what to do and how to do it, and that can be great in some ways. But also you may know each other, you may think you know each other so well that you don't consider other things, you don't try other options, or there's a fear of like, hey, honey, I am thinking maybe I might be interested in this, but I feel embarrassed to tell you, kind of stuff,
Mm.
right? So, this is where how you treat each other in general in the relationship can affect that. Cause it's like, what I really want to tell you is I'd love to try this thing, but you're so pissed at me all the time, or I'm so frustrated with you that I don't feel like I can share that vulnerability with you.
Okay. Sorry, I should probably like be reflecting and thinking deep in my own time. Okay. I'm like, I forgot that we're doing this. So I forgot where we are. Like, wow. It sounds so simple, but it's so profound. Like, I'm like, why is it so hard? So I really like what you said earlier. You were like, I used to suffer from ADHD, now I have it. And, you know, God knows a lot of the problems I have are because of it, but then the ones I've overcome, actually some of it has worked to my favor, right? But talking about sex and sexuality and ADHD, like, are there any advantages to people who have ADHD? Tell me what's so great about me having ADHD so I can make myself feel a bit better, because I'm so frustrated by it.
And okay, so this brings up, I think, an important question, because so in the old days when I started, it used to the language was ADHD is a gift. Now the language is ADHD is a superpower. And I understand where the rationale, right? Like I want people with ADHD to feel good about themselves. I want other people also to feel good about themselves. So that part is fine. But I think there is a risk in saying ADHD is a superpower, and partially it undermines the need for treatment potentially, right? Why would I treat something if it's such an amazing superpower? And also it undermines the sort of hard-earned rights in terms of like accommodations at school and access to treatment and things like that, because why would we accommodate or treat something that's so awesome? But there's another angle on this, which is it's easy to say ADHD is a superpower when you come from privilege. So the sort of classic is, if you're like a 6-year-old white guy who's got an assistant at work and an assistant at home, right? And you just get to be like the fun, creative guy, then it is superpower, because you're not the one dealing with all the sort of bullshit part of your life, right? But if you don't have that privilege, then you're the one who pays the price, right? As opposed to the privileged guy, his spouse and, assistant at work pay the price. So what I would say is all your good qualities, right? You're creative, you're fun, you're funny, you're insightful. I don't care if it comes from your ADHD or your grandmother. It does not matter at all to me. It is who you are. Those are things you should feel good about. You should, run with your strengths, and you should work on your weaknesses and also accept them, right? That there are going to be certain people in your life where it's just like, look, I am not good at being on time. If you need a friend who is always on time, you are in the wrong place. You are not a good fit for me, and I will not be a good fit for you, which is very different from you're the problem. Why can't you be on time?
You mentioned treatment, right? And last time I was medicated was during the pandemic, when, as a freelance journalist, documentary maker, my life felt like it was on fire, as it was the rest of the world. And I went on antidepressants, right?
Mm-hmm.
Antidepressants killed any sexual desire I had. Like, it numbed me out. It was great. It got me out of, it was kind of like a crutch that got me out of depression. And then once I weaned myself off. One, I'm terrified about the impact it would have. Two, when I was first diagnosed with ADHD, age 20, they put me on several different medications, and I didn't like them, but it just felt like it changed my personality. And I was kind of zonked out. And recently I have considered going back on them just to see, because I feel like sometimes I self-medicate. I drink a lot of coffee, or I love nicotine. I love nicotine sprays, which is so stupid. I don't even like smoking, but I love nicotine sprays, and I overdo it. So I have considered perhaps trying them out again in my 30s. But then I'm just worried about, I don't know, would going on ADHD medication have an impact on sex life or sex drive?
Probably not, right? In the sense of like direct effects, probably not. So in my survey, when I asked people, what effect does stimulant medication have on your sex life, it came out to almost exactly 0%, in the sense that Some people said it had negative effects and some people said it had positive effects. So it's really about what does it do for you. Now, you mentioned getting distracted during sex. Believe it or not, being on medication, like medication active while you're being sexual, might actually help you focus more on sex also, as well as focus on paperwork. So that could be a thing. Um, but otherwise, you may find you enjoy sex more when you're not on medication. So you either have sex earlier in the day before you take it, you have it later in the evening when it's worn off, right? So you would find a way to work around it, or it doesn't do anything at all. But what it maybe the bigger effect it has on your sex life is not on your sex life per se, but on your relationship and on your stress level and the energy you have and how you're taking care of yourself, right? That if it helps you manage your life better, if you and your partner are getting along better, you're probably going to have more sex. Whereas if you're sort of scrambling through your day, if you guys are fighting too much, probably sex again is like that first thing to go.
Interesting. So what you're saying is that if anything, it could have a positive impact.
It might. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
sometimes, if I have these sort of knucklehead ADHD guys and their, long suffering female partner and they're not on medication, I might sometimes say, especially if they're complaining about not having sex because, their wife wants to kill them, I will sometimes make this sales pitch. I'm like, dude, you will get laid a lot more on medication if you are not late all the time, if you do the stuff she asks you to do, if you show up in a better way, if you're less, irritable with the kids, like all of this will get you laid much more.
Okay, cool. No, that makes sense. I had lots of specific questions about the incredible findings from your study, but we're out of time. Could I ask you to please tell me some of the most interesting things you found?
I think the most interesting thing, which I totally should have predicted, but I didn't, but I think it was the whole 88, that greater sexual eagerness, right? That like that is again, it completely makes sense when you understand the theory of ADHD. So, in the survey, any of the questions I had that had anything to do with sexual eagerness, so desired sexual frequency, masturbation frequency, porn use frequency, feelings about porn, how quick do you get turned on, being willing to be sexually generous if you're not in the mood, consensual non-monogamy, kinkiness, all that stuff. Folks with ADHD rated themselves higher than the non-ADHD folks on 8 out of 10, and they tied on the other two. Now, interestingly, males rated themselves higher than females on all of those, except for the ones having to do with experience with consensual non-monogamy. And I think maybe it's because females are a little bit more often the gatekeeper on that kind of a thing. So in a heterosexual couple, if the female partner's into it, the guy might be more willing to be into it. But if the guy is into it and the woman isn't, then it's not going to happen.
Interesting.
So in other words, ADHD does have an effect, but so does gender, right? In that it's not just about ADHD, it's about all the rest of who you are and your partner and where you're at in your relationship.
Why do you think people with ADHD have this trait, like are more eager in sex, are more adventurous?
I think it's just people with ADHD have a little bit more of a direct connection to this sort of environment around them in, especially kind of temptations. So looking at porn or masturbating is always going to be more fun than the boring work stuff you have to do. I mean, that's kind of like this snarky answer, but it's true, right? That like doing some crazy kinky thing is definitely more exciting than like, I guess we'll watch a movie, you know? So I think it's that, right? It's sort of feeling that sexual desire and what's sort of more stimulating and maybe a bit riskier or a bit more on the edge is, like some people are going to feel that more and other people will feel it less. Or maybe the other way of putting it is some people will feel the temptation more and less paying attention to like, yeah, but what if we get caught part of it, let's say. And other people will be more focused on the like, yeah, but what if we get caught? Right. So like, sounds like a good idea, but no. So I think that's part of it as well.
Okay. If there was one thing you wanted to leave us with, whether it's a fact, a lesson, anything, when it comes to ADHD and sex, what would it be?
I think what I would say is lean into your strengths, right? Lean into what you're good at, lean into what you enjoy and what you bring that is positive and helpful and good in this relationship or whatever your situation. But, to not only let yourself be defined by the places you struggle most, but to really sort of feel to notice and appreciate the things about yourself that you really like, and to find people who also appreciate those. And if you got too many people in your life who focus too much on the places you struggle, they may not be the people you want to play a starring role in your life.
I feel like I should be apologizing for being so giggly during that interview and a bit self-indulgent, but he made me feel so understood. There was something so refreshing and so nice about someone who knows exactly what I'm talking about, and all these things about myself that I find so irritating and annoying. And without me even having to elaborate, he just knew it and he had answers, which was really good. One thing he said that I found really helpful is don't overthink it. Don't turn it into a much bigger thing. Like, change your mindset about this. For example, with sex, don't let this become this momentous thing where you have to think about blah blah blah. Just do it and just get into it. He kind of like also spoke about not blaming myself, not judging myself when my attention drifts or when I'm not acting how I think I should be. Just forgive yourself. Just be mindful that that's happened, and then move on. I found that really helpful. He did kind of shatter my sort of illusion that my ADHD can be my superpower, because that's sort of how I've dealt with the frustration of having it all my life. But yes, it has given me certain things, but then he also said that, it's also causing issues. And yeah, it does seem like perhaps a lot of the issues I have, especially around sex, could stem from ADHD, which is both annoying and frustrating, but also comforting, because it's like someone's giving me an answer. Having spoken to Ari, there are quite a few things I think I need to go and sit down and think about.
And just like that, this season of Doing Sex comes to a close. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to say a big thank you for listening. And to all our incredible guests, thanks for showing up with honesty, insight, and a whole lot of courage. It's been a real privilege to sit with your stories. As the year winds down, we're taking a little pause, a chance to rest, reflect, and think about what comes next. Until then, take care